but there's a number you have not met before. So Peter and Fiona and Eleanor and a few others and Andrew and others there. Great to sort of half meet you, I suppose, in a way, on Zoom. But we'll get a time when we actually properly meet together and we will meet in real life. Maybe on Saturday at the plant monitoring course or others. But welcome to session 2. Amazing how quick this is coming around, isn't it? And actually in 2 days' time, survey season. It's amazing. I feel I've been 3 months just permanently emailing you about setting stuff up, but you're actually allowed to get loose and go and count things from Saturday, basically. So so very timely that you're about to have your second session to start to get into. I guess tonight's more of a woodland kind of focus back at Bradnam. But welcome everyone. Thank you again for all your time, your commitment in the project, whether you're surveying or coming on the courses. Tim and Anne, I think we've met each other every Saturday for the last 3 weeks on various things. So getting to know you all. Hope the spring is fun, but and hope tomorrow's fun. Saturday's fun for those of you going out Saturday. And Simon, you're going in a couple of weeks' time, aren't you? But I guess you'll cover all that at the end of tonight's session. So probably enough for me to hand you over to your more than capable host, Dave and Simon, to walk you through your prep session. But hello, have good fun tonight and enjoy the weekend. See you in a bit.
Thank you very much, Nick. Okay. Right, welcome back. As Nick said, this is number 2. Today we're going to be focusing on woodland birds. And for those of you who were on the Bradnam walk with Dave and myself in March, you got a view of how cold it can get sometimes on surveys. Even in April, it's still quite chilly. And you probably saw quite a host of wintry type birds that we probably won't be getting on our BBS, our breeding bird surveys. But today we focused the next 2 or 3 sessions on Zoom on particular subsets of species, and today we really wanted to cover woodland. Quite a lot of you might have little copses or little woodland areas on your surveys, so we thought we'd do a little bit of a focus on that. So just going to share my screen. There we go. Okay, so we've entitled tonight Woodland Birds, Where Your Ears Are Your Eyes. And Dave and I have had obviously a lot of feedback when we're on the walks that how on earth can you identify all of those sounds as you're wandering aimlessly around? And the easy answer is, I mean, Dave and I, we're only in our mid-20s. It's just been very, very, very strong, heavy bike sort of paper rounds we've been having. But I don't know if we've ever added it up, Dave, but I've been birding for 30, oh goodness me, I've been birding for 38 years. And I don't know how long you've been birding.
Over 50 now.
So we've been collectively birding for 88 years, which would give you a bit of a an insight as to maybe why we can hear things that you'll be thinking, you know, they're just in a sort of a mass of noise. What we tend to do when we're out is focus on a particular species. If we know that one's going to be in the area, if we suddenly hear a belt of a thrush song, we'll then dive into our experience levels and see there's a subtlety between it, and then hopefully we'll locate it, and then the magic comes to life as to that was a song thrush or that was a missile thrush or a blackbird. But the reason we're saying about the experience is we don't expect you to get 88 years of experience over the next couple of months. But the reason that we've got the experience is that we went out a lot. We went out a lot, both as children and as adults, and we learned what the songs were. And that's hopefully what we're going to be doing to you. We're going to be teaching you step by step the bits to listen out for. And, you know, Dave and I haven't got all the answers. There'll still be garden warblers and black caps that fox us. Will still be, is that a marsh tit? Is that a cold tit? You know, we still need to get our ears in even after all this time. So woodland birding does tend to be by our ears, and certainly on surveys. I was out this morning in Oxfordshire, And I think I recorded something in the region of 12 chiffchaffs. I think there was probably about 20 to 30 wrens, maybe 15 dunnocks. I saw none of them. I saw no wrens, I saw no dunnocks, I saw no chiffchaffs. Yet they've all been recorded because they're all singing, they're all on territory, so they've all been marked down. So we just need to, we're sort of reiterating this, is that although some of your surveys you'll be thinking, I'm never going to remember them all. It's just to try and, get your ear in on wrens, get your ear in on dunnocks, get your ear in on chiffchaffs, because you will be recording a lot of them. And if you can get those little subtleties, which is what we're going to show you tonight, it'll make a difference to your survey. We're going to go into what we normally do, which is a bit of a deep dive into the species. But first, we wanted to tell you a little bit about the different types of woods. And I'm not sort of teaching you to suck eggs here, really. You will get different birds in different woodland locations. And even in small copses and wooded scrubby areas, again, will have their own different species. Bradenham has it's mostly deciduous, the bit that we walk into, but there is a little bit of pine tree in there. And anyone who was on my walk, we sort of said, right, we're coming up to here, there's a few pine trees, we might get coal tit, and bang, straight away, as soon as we hit that particular area, we got coal tit. We'd walked for 25, 30 minutes through woodland where I wasn't even listening for coal tit because I didn't expect to see them there. So it's really important as you're going around your survey areas that you get to know them, you get to recognize where the birds are going to be potentially. So we do come back to this at the end. We are going to sort of talk you through thinking about where you are, not only where you are in the country as to what birds you might be seeing, but also what types of woodland you're in. So for instance, even straight from the just looking at these two photographs, in the left-hand side, I'd be looking for gold crests, I'd be looking for coal tits, might be looking for great tits and blue tits potentially. But other than that, not a great deal else. There might be, if we're lucky, there might be woodcocks in the ferny undergrowth, but on the right-hand side, I would be thinking nuthatches, tree creepers. I'll be thinking great spotted woodpecker, great tit, marsh tit, blue tit, dunnocks, wrens. So you can see just by the location that you're in, there'll be different things for you to think about. As always, for the first section, you've got me, and Dave is going to be ably monitoring the chat. Any questions you have that come up, Dave will answering them, and then around about halfway through, we'll swap over, and Dave will take you through the next set of species, and then we'll come together at the end to do a little bit of detective work on woodland, and also to let you know what's happening on Saturday if you're joining Dave, and on the Saturday the 15th if you're joining me. Other than letting me, Nick and Dave know, I don't actually think there's any restrictions on you going out with Dave on Saturday and then asking to come out with me on the following Saturday. So, don't feel just because you're, thank you, Nick, just because you're in group 1 or group 2. I know we try and there's a lovely friendly rivalry. But again, if you suddenly find yourself free on the 15th and you've already been out with Dave on the 1st and you fancy walking around Bradenham again, do feel free. The more times you come out with us, the more knowledge hopefully we can impart to you. But as I say, chuck everything that you need to know the answer to in the chat. Dave will do his best to answer. I've not seen him stumped yet. I've been stumped quite a few times, but obviously, as we heard, Dave's got 12 years more birding experience than me, so he's a lot more knowledge. So I've called this first one the Tits Conundrum, and this is the reason we put these ones first is because we're always asked, is that a great tit? Is that a blue tit? Is that a coal tit? Is that a long-tailed tit? When you see them visually, they're normally quite easy to identify. But typically when you hear them for that first time, you might be a little bit, is it this, is it not? So we're going to go over some of their calls and some of their song. But typically if you see a biggish yellowish tit with a big line down the center of its breast, very likely to be great tits. You can sex great tits. If you look at the little picture on the right hand side there, you can see that the female has a broken belly band and has a much more diffuse black band that goes down through the breast, whereas the adult male has a very wide, thick band that and very much more clearly marked. It's also a more vibrant yellow. So that enables us to identify the bird in the picture as a male great tit. Now, that's probably as much as you ever need to know. I can't remember the last time I actively I tried to identify great tits other than in my garden. On the bird survey, the ones singing are likely to be the males, but anyone that's calling, again, could be male or female. So if you do get a good view of them and you can note it down on the sighting sheet as male or female, that's brilliant. So the song is, oh, I'll tell you what I've done. Almost, it had me. Right there, I forgot to do screen sharing with sound. There we go. Right, so the Great Tit song. Okay.
Yeah, Simon, you
Going
haven't
up-
got the slide on the screen. I've got your Google search. That's better. Could hear the sound okay, but
Right, okay, not sure what happened there. There we go.
that's it.
So the Great Tit song. Now you can see the Great Tit and hear it at the same time. Often described as the teacher song as well, the Great Tits. If you ever hear anything, and I think Bill Oddie once described it as if you don't know what it is, it's probably a great tit. That does make a lot of sense if you are struggling. But again, just by spending a little bit of time, sort of, especially from birds in your garden, when they start singing, you'll start to get a better viewpoint of it. This is the Great Tit call. Really Now, the one that this gets most, oh, there we go. The one that this gets most confused with is the blue tit. Although, as you can hear from the blue tit song, it's a much more, I guess, sort of, the best way to describe it, I think, is a little bit higher and a little bit more erratic and urgent than the great tit. Rather than the vibrant teacher of the great tit. Often repeated, that's a good indication of it being a tit rather than any of the other species, is the amount of repetition that goes on them as well. And the blue tit call. We often describe this when I don't know if Dave does this as well, but it's if you're wondering what a tit call is and you walk past it and it starts doing this, the blue tit, I feel, is scolding you. It's telling you off. The great tit sort of it's in the background, but it's not that bothered. Whereas the blue tit is like, yeah, I don't want you anywhere near me. Doing a little bit of scolding there. And again, you can tell the males and female blue tits apart. Unlike in real life, where the female of the species is much more glamorous and beautiful, in the bird world, the females tend to be a little bit drabber in plumage, and the blue tends to be a little bit less blue. And again, what we can see from the picture there, and this was it's almost like I planned it, but I didn't. We can tell that that's a male blue tit there as well. The third element in the tit family that you'll hopefully see at Bradenham is long-tailed tit. I think we saw these both in the wooded area as well as near the churchyard as well when we walked around there. Pretty unmistakable. I think we said last time it was if you lose the tail of a long-tailed tit, it's actually the smallest bird in Britain. There's a reason it's called long-tailed tit. They look like balls of fluff when they're flying away from you, and their call is quite an urgent call. I feel it really wants to get your attention. Very high pitched, and then a little chirr afterwards. Long-tailed tits tend to get more mistaken for goldcrests than they do for either blue tit or great tit, because there's that high pitched squeaking noise there. So that's long-tailed tit. And then the last of the tit conundrum is coal tit. We should see these or hear these at Bradenham on Saturday with Dave. Even though the Collins guide is very useful, and that's where we've sort of taken a lot of these sort of descriptive pictures from. You really don't need to worry about the Algerian, Tunisian or Cyprus subspecies of coal tit on the right there, and just focus on what we see most here in the UK, which is that sort of Britannicus, which is a much more sort of browner on the breast and the side, and also sort of that grey back with those white wing bars. Seen from behind, we've got that real clear white nape spot that goes down the back of the head there. And from a call perspective, we'll do the call first here. Very different to the blue tits. None of the little churry long-tailed tits. Again, quite a small, quite a vibrant call there. And what we should hopefully have on Saturday, if you're lucky, they were certainly singing this morning. Foo-hee, 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 foo-hee. Tweet, tweet, tweet. We had some in the churchyard at Bradenham last time we were there, so I'm doing this the exact song, even though it was in early March. So keep your eyes and your ears poised for coal tit there. When you put them all up on the screen, they're really easy, aren't they? One's blue back, one's green back, one's grey back, one's pink back. There we go, nice and easy. When you're in the middle of a dawn chorus, or you've got fleeting views of these little bundles of feathers going past, it can be a different matter. Again, watch the birds in your garden. If you're lucky enough to get a few of these species, watch how they fly. See how the blue tit sort of is almost like it's like a little bumblebee, the way it sort of shoots through, and you get the jaunty I can't remember the words I'm looking for here. I think the down flight of the long-tailed tit as they move from bushes to bushes. And then the great tit typically is another one that will call while it's in flight as well. So if you can hear that strident great tit call as they're flying away as well. Any questions about our wonderful tit family at all? Brilliant. Should be one of the easiest, and we should get all 4 species. We deliberately, although both Dave and I got marsh tit, we didn't put it in this one particularly because we may still get them at Bradenham. But for the majority of you on your surveys, you're unlikely to come across marsh tit. I think I've done 15, 18 different survey sites over the winter, and I think I had marsh tit at 2 of them. So. But anyone who wants to know the subtleties of marsh tit, if you go back and watch the first video in this series, you can revisit the marsh tit that we did last time. Next, we're on to the finches. Now, we're only focusing on 3 finches tonight. There are sort of 5 commonest finches or finches you're possibly likely to see in the UK during your survey period. And there's quite a few others that you might see in the winter, such as siskin and redpoll. We've focused on chaffinch, goldfinch, and greenfinch tonight. And the reason for that is that, for the most part, these are the ones that are going to be in your survey areas. The chaffinch call is, if you ever hear birders talking about pink, you'll see why in a moment. This is the chaffinch. Pink. Pink. They do this a lot. They can do this for what seemingly like hours, and they'll just do that same call in the background there. But if you're lucky, you might hear one sing. It's not the most exciting of songs, but I enjoy it. And you'll notice there's quite a Dave and I always talk about the timing element of black caps and how long they sing for, and the same for chaffinches. They'll sing, they'll do that little and then there'll be a big gap. But while you're listening for that big gap, you obviously recorded the wood pigeon and the jackdaw that was also in that little clip as well. So that's one of the key things when you're in a woodland, is that you're not just listening to the thing that you're trying to identify in front of you. You've got other stuff going on around you as well. Identification wise, male and female, again, quite different. Pretty much the only one with that whole pink sort of on the breast there, with that pale pastel blue head as well. But again, you will see these at Bradnam, and most of you should get these on your surveys as well. There we go, he's having another shout. The goldfinch. The goldfinch is again, everybody likes seeing these when we're out on the walks. The call typically given when flying over. Most awe-inspiring, but very much a little chatter. It sounds like they're having a chat with each other, talking about various bits and pieces. But when they sing, which they typically do from the tops of little trees, brilliant, jangly, very different to the chaffinch, and much quicker in the timings of their delivery. For the most part, if you see them well, pretty much unmistakable. Big yellow wings with that red face. Often, if you're doing sort of farmland survey, they might be down feeding in the teasels, feeding in the set-aside, yeah, you'll probably hear them before you see them, and then you'll turn a corner, and then suddenly they'll fly up in the hedge in front of you as well. As Dave's just put in the chat there, chaffinches often feed on the ground, whereas goldfinches are tree bush feeders. And we're going to go a little bit into where you are in the world as to where the different layers within the woodland is where you might have to look for these things as well. The goldfinches and the chaffinches will probably not be right in deep in the middle of the wood, but tend to hang around by the fringes, the edges of the wood there as well. And another edge dweller is the greenfinch. And I always get a big thrill when I'm walking around my village. We live in Milton Keynes, but then we've got the little area I live in is in Bradwell Village. And just the sort of those early morning walks. And I'll always stop as soon as I hear this sound. The wheeze of the greenfinch. Totally different to those jangly chaffinches and goldfinches. Typically delivered right from the top of the tree. They do little song flights as well. They're called, it looks like a butterfly when it's doing that, really sort of flaps its wing quite fast. But yeah, really wheezy, nasally sound. And when they're calling, it's a much more subdued wheeze. But still, again, for the most part, if you get that in your head, if you get that sort of, if you're out there, maybe you've got green finches coming into the garden, listen to them call to each other. You'll really start to see the difference there. Pretty unmistakable, unless you're in various areas of Corsica and other places in mid-Europe where you might be confused with citral finch, but otherwise, the only real all green finch that's not streaky. So you might get siskins and that, but they'll be a lot smaller and more black on the head. But green finches have that beautiful yellow wing bar, and as you can see there on the picture on the right, lots of yellow in the tail and in the wings when it flies. Once again, like all of these things, much easier to see when they're all nicely sitting alongside each other. Pink for the chaffinch, green for the greenfinch, and gold for the goldfinch. If they were doing this properly, it would have probably been goldfinch, greenfinch, pinkfinch, and then redfinch for bullfinch. But I think they run out of colours by the time they got there. Again, we've deliberately not included the bullfinch, and again, not because we don't love the bullfinch. The bullfinch is amazing. Whenever we see that on our walks, we I mean, I think we do see it quite a lot when we're at Lodge Hill and Ivanhoe. But again, it's one of those very localized species, and you may not get them on your survey. So we really wanted to focus on the things that you'll get around the periphery of those edges. And again, what Dave said there is, yeah, all the finches frequently call in flight as well. So when you are sort of standing in the middle of the wood and you're hearing these things, you get to be flying over the canopy as well. Okay. The next set that we're going to focus on, and it's lovely that people have been putting this stuff in the tracking the impact, getting your head around song thrush and missile thrush. I think even for people coming back, I think on their third year, for the ID skills are still right. Is it song thrush? Is it missile thrush? When you see the thrush, obviously with the song thrush, it's that warmer brown, nice sort of brownish wash to the flanks there, and those really sort of nice, neat little brown markings and pink legs. But when we're in the woodland and we're all ears, what do we want to be listening out for? Repetition. We want to be listening for repeated phrases. Repeat, repeat, repeat. If you think it sounds like a song thrush, then it probably is a song thrush. Choo-choo-choo, choo-choo-choo. Choo-choo-choo. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Just have that in the back of your mind. If it's repeating a lot, it's probably a song thrush. When you start to get a lot more excited, notice a few people are looking out for missile thrushes at the moment. You really want to be, if you're in the middle of a woodland, there's a dawn chorus, you'll probably have 2 or 3 song thrushes going on. They're very loud. What you want to be listening for with missile thrush is the thing in the background. Even when you're standing underneath missile thrushes, they're not as loud. No real repetition. Very evenly spaced. And typically, if you're walking under one, or again, you're near the sound, and immediately after you hear this sort of very low level, I think they're quite chilled out, missile thrushes, but when they fly, they make this wonderful rattling. And you might see 1 or 2 or a pair, or sort of especially family parties later on in the year, all doing this churry call. Song thrushes have a very, we didn't even put the song thrush call in, very high, very low, sorry, very high, very sort of a very red wingy like in its call. Missile thrush has that really. And as you can see from coloration wise, they haven't got that browny wash down the flanks. The brown on the back is much colder, and they're about 15–25% bigger than the song thrush if you see them alongside each other. Have that big white underwing as well. You can see there on the picture on the right. Have a fairly long tail. They're one of the bigger thrushes. They're similar in size to the fieldfare, and you can see there is a size differential. I think that's a bit more of an artistic impression. They are a bit bigger, but if you see one on its own, it's very difficult to judge the sizes of them. But yeah, if you haven't got a Collins bird guide, as we said, you can get it on your phone or get one. Dave and I typically have one that we carry around with us, either on the phone or in a physical copy. So we'll try and show you all the subtleties as we go along. The one that you tend to get the most mistaken for in terms of missile thrush, as I say, if you've got two brown thrushes singing, they're probably quite easy to tell apart. When we start to think about the blackbird song, much more of that missile thrush type. A lot louder, a lot more, I think, sort of relaxed, even though we said that the missile thrush is quite chilled out. The blackbird just think, oh, I'm just going to do this. Typically, they're on the top of again large trees, small trees in the garden, or sitting on roofs as well. In the woodlands around where we're going to be going, all of these will be up high. Blackbirds, the song thrushes, the missile thrushes, for the most part, when they're singing, they want to be as high as they can to get that song as far as they can. However, if you hear this, a little bit like the chaffinch, but much louder, much more vibrant, they're probably a lot lower because they were either feeding and you've walked into their territory, or there's another threat. And what you will also hear is a sort of a big as they sort of disappear off into the undergrowth as well. So the blackbirds, as I say, is the think of it as sort of a halfway house between sort of song thrush and robin, which we'll hear in a moment. But again, for those missile thrush lovers out there, you really got to be listening out for that sort of low, prolonged, sort of subtle call in the background. Blackbird is a bit more vibrant, a bit up front. Male and female, quite different, as you can see there. And hopefully most of you are quite familiar with this within your birds in your garden as well. The only other one that we wanted to put into this group is the amazing, incredible starling. It doesn't get any better than that, does it? Look at that plumage there. It's vibrant, it's amazing. And I think it's one of the most beautiful birds there is. And then they start singing. And again, I think it's not quite thrush territory here, but if you hear a couple of these singing on your surveys, that sort of chattery type thing in the background. That's lovely. Very quick, urgent. Hopefully we'll see quite a few starlings. Starlings are on the, this is I'm trying to think. I think they're definitely on the amber list. I'm not even sure if they're on the red list at all. Luckily I have my thing here. Starlings. Yes, starlings are red listed on Birds of Conservation Concern, which means their population across Europe has diminished by at least 50–55%. I don't know if Dave's got any more accurate updates on that, but they've yeah, the fact that they're red listed across Europe will mean they're in heavy decline. So even though we probably still got millions of pairs here, it's obviously not as many as we had in the early 90s. So please record all of your starling territories as well. There we go. So we're having a chat again. Once again, when we see them all nice and sedate on the screen like this, fairly easy to identify that vibrancy, that big yellow bill of the starling. You might be mistaken for the blackbird, but obviously with that jet black plumage. And then you've got the song thrush there with its sort of browny back, and the whistle thrush with its slaty grey. The last three from me, until I hand you over to Dave, pleased to note, is we are going to be looking at Dunnock, Wren and Robin. Now, these are, again, pretty common garden birds for most people, but they're sometimes the tricky ones for you to get your ear into when you're doing those early morning surveys, those dawn choruses. Particularly tricky for a lot of people at Dunnocks, because they start a little bit like Wren, but then they end very quickly. Here we go.
Fastest singer in the garden.
I mean, they stop for ages.
Yeah.
And there we go. And they're over. If you listen for more than 10, 15, 20 seconds, they'll tend to repeat it, especially if they're on full territory, and you'll be thinking, is it Wren, is it Dunnock? But it's that, as Dave said, they deliver it so quickly. It's like they want to just get it over and done with. It's but I think it's beautiful when you're out there on a brisk, fresh spring morning, and you're having all these little Dunnocks around you. The call is very, once you get your earring on it, it's quite intrusive on your psyche. We'll hear the wren in a moment. Most people mistake it for robins. Robins have a sort of more melodic call. I think Dunnock calls are very, very metallic sounding. Sounds like someone's banging something with metal. The question we was asked on my walk last time was, are Dunnocks any different to hedge sparrows or hedge accenters? Nope, they're all the same species. They're at various times. They actually are a member of the accenter family, so they shouldn't really be referred to as sparrows. They're the same species as alpine accenter or Siberian accenter. However, they're most commonly known in the UK as Dunnock. I don't know any other sort of colloquial names for them. Wish Mariki was on the call. She'd probably give us the Dutch version of it. But yeah, so don't be, if you record them for however you want to, but the BTO code is D dot. So BTO recognise in the UK when we're recording them as Dunnock. The wren. So let's just do the call very quickly of the wren. Very urgent, very tick, 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 tick. Very different, I feel, to that metallic, much more sped up, faster. Whereas the Dunnock is ting, 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 ting. The call, which most of us have probably heard, starts off, goes into a massive trill, and then carries on. It's not, I know sort of Dave mentioned about Dunnock being the fastest. The wren, while it's delivering it fast, actually goes on for quite a while. So again, if you're hearing the song and it's taking 3-4 seconds to deliver, it's going to more likely to be the wren. If it's about 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, that's when you start to be thinking about Dunnock there. And if you're lucky enough on your surveys, we always say we sometimes don't enjoy the surveys as much because we're looking and listening around. But you get one of those wrens and it's sitting up on the top of a fern or a nettle, and you just see it belting that song out. So a real pleasure as an ornithologist to watch that little bird belt out that huge song. And then the last one from me for today, Robin. And again, pretty unmistakable. Most of you have hopefully seen Robins. When we think about their song, we think the Robin, it sounds almost apologetic. It doesn't, it's not as vibrant and as loud as the blackbird, but it's certainly not as in the background as the missel thrush. And quite often it's the only one going through the night, similar to, or in late evening, similar to the song thrushes. But again, I think a real understated bird of our surveys. I probably recorded about 6 or 7 this morning, so nowhere near as many as wrens and dunnocks and stuff, but there's certainly been quite a few out there when Braddon when we go there. And again, Paul, not quite as urgent and repetitive as the wren, but not anywhere near as metallic as the dunnocks there. Again, just get to learn these when you're going around, especially when you're on the walk with Dave and I. You know, we do shut up occasionally, so you know we get you to enjoy the birds that are in the background there. All right, just listening to Birds of the Dawn Chorus. There we go. So that's the first section of the deep dive done. Deep dive done. Oops, no, Dave is going to regale us in a moment with the next set of the species. Any questions up to this point that you haven't yet put in the chat? Please feel free to do so. If not, Dave is going to take us away with the next section.
Simon, quick question for me.
Yes, Peter.
The call of the great tit you just played was kind of quite one tone, but I kind of think about a great tit as being sort of up, down, up, down, up, down. Is that wrong?
No. Great tits have 3 or 4 different main songs. So the one you're thinking of is teacher, 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 teacher. Yeah. So the they you know, my experience, they alternate between the teacher and that t. And there's also 2 or 3 others, and so that's why you'll probably see me and Dave when you first go, and lots of you have got amazing hearing, and you go, what's that? And it's like 3 miles away, and we're like, it's going to be something, but it'll probably be a great tit. So yes, we didn't put the teacher pop up the full song in here, but yeah, you're absolutely spot on, Peter.
The one in my garden does that more.
Yeah.
And which is tick and which is tack and which is tock? Is it the tick is the robin, is it? And the tack is the wren and the tock is the, no, it's not that. It's wren, blackcap and robin, tick, tack, tock, and I can't remember which way around it is.
So the robin ticks, the blackcap tacks, and whatever's left tocks.
Okay, thank you. Robin ticks, tick. Blackcap tacks. Yeah, thank you.
50 years of experience, Susie. That's what does it on your tick tack tocks.
I can only remember 2 species at a time. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to find the slides. Let's have it. Show the slides. I thought I'd already set this up, but apologies for not having done that.
Don't forget to do the share sound, Dave, because I forgot.
Sorry, share sound. Oh gosh, right.
Just think 3 years back when we hardly knew what we were doing on Zoom.
Still don't.
Yes, you do.
Can you hear me? Can you all hear me all right?
Yeah.
Did I can't, where's the share screen with sound option, Simon?
You're on mute, Simon.
Simon's on mute.
If you share screen and you see the bottom left hand side, there's a little checkbox that says share sound.
Ah, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so we start off with I get to do the best families. No, actually, we went through it earlier with Simon myself and suggested that we start off, or I start off with pigeons, but I get some of the better ones as we get through the presentation. But we're going to start with one that we all know, the ubiquitous wood pigeon. A bird that we see absolutely everywhere. It's the pigeon of the road. One way of differentiating wood pigeons and stock doves is you will never see stock dove in the middle of the road trying to get run over. It's always going to be the wood pigeons. Big lump of a bird, but in spring, when you look at the adults, especially the coming up to breeding, the head pattern and the neck pattern and the colour on the breast are absolutely gorgeous to look at in the sun, as are a lot of pigeon species. Big, heavy, incredibly fast to take off, considering the weight of these things. I mean, they snap up into the air. It's a bit like a pheasant. When you scare one, they snap up into the air in milliseconds and can fly off. And demonstrating that big white transverse wing bar on the adults. Obviously, juveniles, which you can see pretty much at any time of the year these days, tend to lack that transverse wing bar, but they just tend to be a sort of a washed out shade of wood pigeon generally. Big long tail, big black end to it, and it's something that you're going to hear this time of year. You're going to hear everywhere. Repetitive, continuous, and everywhere. But it's still a nice sound to listen to. And this is part of the display.
We can't hear it at all, Dave. I don't know if anyone else can. If you hover over the microphone, there's a little thing at the end that's got a volume control. If you can hear it, Andrew, then it's just me. I'll shut up.
I did turn it up. Earlier, the microphone.
It's just me then, Dave. You go ahead.
No, I'm just output level. Let's try that. Let's put that up. Try that. Let's see what happens now. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. It was fairly quiet. Is that any better? So that's at the end of that is the wing clap, which is part of the display of wood pigeon. They often do it sometimes when they're flying away, but this time of the year we'll see them taking off and flapping around. But the clapping below the body, the wing claps to let the females know that they're around. That's the what have I done? What have I done? This is not going according to plan. Right. Screen sharing stop. Apologies for this. Okay. Moving on to the stock dove. This is one that we did see at Bradnam last time. Hewenden Park is a great place to see them up close. But they are a bird that is actually seems to be increasing in numbers, certainly in the Chilterns. Slightly, as the name suggests, they are quite a stocky pigeon, but they are slightly smaller than the wood pigeon, probably about 10% or so, and fly in a similar manner to the wood pigeon, but tend to be the wings tend to be sort of more triangular, and they're edged in black, as you can see on the illustration here. The bird flying away, you can see that the black on the wings stretches all the way along the secondaries and the primaries and up round onto the forewing, rather than being all black primaries and all grey secondaries on the wood pigeon. Maybe flies sort of slightly faster, but it's a bird that you'll get in the woodlands, you'll get in the parklands, but you won't get them in the gardens. You won't get them sitting in the middle of the road, and they're not, although they are quite common in the right places, they're not the sort of thing that you're going to get to see alongside a wood pigeon. And the song is very different. To my mind, it's deeper. It's almost owl-like in the way that it's delivered, with that woo whoop woo whoop woo whoop. And when you go into a wood, just stop and listen, because if the bird is 50, 100, 150 yards away, it might be quite faint. But when they are singing like that, the sound does carry, and you will sort of hear them in the distance, but they're not the most overt of noises compared to, say, the wood pigeon. And a lovely bird to look at. Say Hewenden Park is a great place to see them. There's lots of trees that have been, the trunks have been broken and providing lots of nesting holes for them. And the colours of the sides of the neck and the breast and the head are something else when you get them in the full sunshine. An absolutely cracking pigeon. Now this is a bird of the gardens, so you're not that likely to get these in the same place as you'll find stock doves. Obviously, you're going to find these in the same place that you get a lot of wood pigeons, which is in the gardens, on the wires, overhead wires, around the streets of villages and towns. Very, very common there, but not nearly so common in the countryside. You won't find them. You probably might see them around the churchyard in Bradnam. It's unlikely we'll see them on the walk in the fields and in the woods when we're there. Much more, it's a different genus of dove or pigeon. Different structure, longer tail, different coloration around the wings and the tail, as you can see on the illustration on the right there, and it's a lovely little dove. Good sparrowhawk fodder. So you see them appearing in your gardens, and then they might sort of disappear after a couple of weeks. It may be that they haven't departed on their own terms. It may have been the local sparrowhawk that might have taken them. But they're a lovely little dove. Very nice, subtle colorations on the wings and the tail. But obviously, the big ID mark against the pale brown colour is the black half collar around the back of the neck. You'll often see them in pairs, and they'll often just sort of sit around for quite a long time. And when they take off, they can take off very steeply as well, almost more steeply than a wood pigeon can. And they'll go straight up into the air and then fly off to the next garden garden next to that. So this is the song. The first one was the flight call. So something that we're probably all very familiar with around our gardens and our streets. So there's the pigeon parade, as Simon's described it. So we have wood pigeon top left, stock dove. So these are the two, you know, somewhere going around Bradnam. These are the two that we're most likely to see on the woodland edges, in the woods, and the wood pigeon will be out in the fields as well. Collared dove we might see in the churchyard and around the village. And then we have the feral pigeon, which comes in Heinz 57 varieties, and is something that you'll see in groups in open fields around towns and villages, but not one that you'll often see in the woods. And as I say, they come in such a variety of guises that we'd be here all night if we wanted to go through all the different plumage guises that they can have. So moving on to a couple of species now that one of which you'll know very, very well. It's a ubiquitous bird of gardens now, towns and villages, as well as the countryside. And this is the magpie. Starting to get to the time of the year where you'll see a magpie just sort of sitting on top of a telegraph pole or a bush or something, and just sitting and watching as the crows do, to just observing life below them and trying to identify the location of the next easy meal for them. Quick run through the call. You know, it's pretty sort of raucous and ugly, but it's, you know, it's unforgettable. And you know, even if you don't see them sitting in a bush or in a tree somewhere, and you hear that noise, then you know you've got yourself a magpie. The next one is can be quite conspicuous, but is mostly sort of quite inconspicuous. And this is much more a bird of the woodland. So we should, well, hopefully we'll hear them, possibly see them when we go around Bradnam at the weekend, or in 2 weeks' time, as on Simon's team. A big bird, bigger bodied than the magpie, but not as long-tailed. And often the best way of identifying it is as it is in the illustration on the bottom right here. As it flies away, you have this big white rump. And it's pretty much the only bird of the woodland that is that sort of size, that has that sort of rump colour. As I say, very inconspicuous for such a large bird. It can sit in a tree and it will be watching you. But at other times, if it's seen something like a tawny owl, or you're too close to its nesting area, its territory, then they can be quite vocal, and they can be quite obvious as well, as they come down, fly down towards you, and try and usher you away from their particular area. But a beautiful bird, can be seen, especially in autumn, in family parties, and in times when food is hard, that they will come out of the woodlands much more and come into gardens, sometimes fields and so on, to try and look for goodies to eat. So the call not nearly as raucous as the magpie. But yeah, quite unique to the jay, and once you latched onto it, it's quite easy to remember. So those are two. I mean, magpie we'll definitely see. Hopefully, we'll hear and see jay over the next couple of weeks on our tour journeys around Bradnam. Now we get on to some of the interesting, more interesting species, those that we didn't see on our first walks around Bradnam, but now that spring has sprung, hopefully we're going to see a few more of these chiffchaff, and we'll start with the chiffchaff. We're on the warblers now. These chiffchaff is a member of the genus Philoscopus. When I started out bird watching over 50 years ago, I thought the Philosk was spelled FFLOSK. And it was a while before I realised it was PHYLLOSCPUS. So yeah, so it's things you learn as you get older. But the chiffchaff is one of the first spring migrants to arrive, along with the wheatear and the black redstart and the sand martin. And over the last 2 weeks, there's been a great influx of these into the UK, and they are, as Simon mentioned earlier on most of his farmland surveys at the moment, they've arrived and are setting up territories and starting to sing. So this is a small bird, slightly smaller than a great tit, slightly larger than a blue tit, slightly more streamlined than both of those, not really so sort of round-bodied, but can be quite unobvious, even in trees that don't have any leaves at the moment. They can be flitting around those, but they can still be quite difficult to see. But you know, as the slide describes there, it's the song is the name of the bird. Sometimes it's backwards, but it's going to be made up of chip chap, chip chap, chip chip chap chap chip. As we will play now, so that you can hear it. This is the call. And that's the song. Now, in terms of looking at this as a species and identifying it, we point out the dark, very dark, almost black legs. One of the things that we'll try and point out over the next few sessions is what we call primary projection. So the primaries are the large feathers on the outer wing. And on this photograph here, you can see the primaries just about covering the rump, the length of the rump, but don't really sort of reach the tail feathers. And there's not, and just up towards the top of the rump there, the rest of the bunch of the secondaries bunched together. So the difference between the length of the secondaries and the length of the longest primary is what we call the primary projection. And on a chiffchaff, it's quite a short primary projection. Other characteristics of this, it's quite a sort of a dowdy bird in many ways. It's quite sort of buffy underneath, greeny brown on top, greeny olivey brown on top. Does have a slight eye stripe, yellowy eye stripe, not always easy to see. Whitish throat, quite a short insect catching bill, and the tail is not too long, so medium length. But one of the field characteristics when you're looking at Philoscopus warblers is that the chiffchaff will often flick its tail downwards, and that's quite a characteristic of that particular species. So if you see a bird doing that, it looks like a chiffchaff, and you're not sure whether it's a chiffchaff or willow warbler, and it's flicking its tail, then it's definitely a chiffchaff. The species that we get, or the subspecies that we get in the UK, is the colubita, which is the one on the left here. As you can see, it's sort of fairly sort of colourless on the back, and buffy, whitish on the underparts there. When we compare that to the next one, and this is its sort of closest relative that we're going to see in the UK. Hopefully we'll see them on Saturday. It might be a little bit early. Willow warblers are a later arrival than chiffchaffs, and their range is moving north at quite a rate. So we'll be very lucky if we get willow warblers as a breeding bird on our surveys. Chiffchaff, almost certainly we will get, but willow warbler is one that will pass through in April and May, and it won't necessarily stay to breed. We'll see them again in July and August when the adults return south. But the difference between this and the chiffchaff, it's difficult to see the primary projection on that photograph. If you look at the illustration on the right, you can see there the bunch of the secondaries and the longer gap to the end of the longest primary. So that is the longer primary projection. Tend to be greener, whiter underneath, bit of an orangey colour on part of the bill there, maybe a slightly yellower eye stripe, but notice the paler orangey brown legs of the willow warbler. Now sometimes they can look very dark depending on the light, but these birds will never dip their tail. And this, as I say, the thing to look for is the primary projection. But obviously, one of the things that is going to separate them is this, which is one of the most beautiful spring noises that you can hear. Absolutely beautiful, and if you can get out and hear that, if you don't feel good after hearing that, then there's no hope. No, that is a beautiful noise. And the call is that's very quiet recording of the call, and I hope you can hear it. It's slightly more what we call disyllabic, so it's much more obviously two-note rather than the chiffchaff, which is sort of more of a one-note type call. So that's the willow warbler, and hopefully you get to see them during the course of the spring. Now then, this is the one. We all should know this one by now. The blackcap. The bird of the scrub, the bird of the woods, and as many of us have found out over the course of the winter, a bird of the gardens as well. Now, the ones that have been visiting my garden for the last 3 months have now disappeared over the last couple of days. They're probably heading off back to east of the Urals, to their breeding grounds. And they'll be replaced fairly soon by the birds coming up from Africa and Spain, and they'll be the ones that will be breeding in the Chilterns and around the woods and scrubby areas and fields and things around here. Quite an unmistakable bird when you get a good view of them. Sometimes they do take a bit of hunting out. I think the picture at the bottom, which is the female, the one with the brown cap, if we look at that in silhouette, I think that sort of absolutely typifies the blackcap shape. It's quite dumpy. It's got quite a rounded, domed head a lot of the time, and that shape is absolutely characteristic of a blackcap. The male at the top, as you can see, it's got its crown feathers sort of slightly raised, so it's probably a bird in the spring, getting ready to either see off a challenger or to start singing And it's much more sleek looking. And the colour between the two is that different. You know, the male is grey, more browner on the primaries and secondaries, but the female is definitely browner, and then that sort of gingery cap. But this is the song that we'll all be looking forward to hearing again. Almost sounding like a little bit sort of blackbird in tone in parts of that, and that very sort of start point. But this is a bird that will sing. It can sing for minutes at a time, or it can sing just in sort of phrases, as this particular recording is showing. But it's quite scratchy at times, but it can be quite rich. And it does have a series of 5 or 6 notes that are consistently repetitive throughout the song, which helps to identify the fact that it's a blackcap. And this species is the yardstick that we'll use to compare all the other Sylvia warblers or scrub warblers against, as we go through and do our ID courses over the next few weeks and months, because the blackcap is the commonest one that will be inhabiting most of the places that we'll be surveying, and we'll be looking to compare and contrast whitethroat, lesser whitethroat, and garden warbler against the blackcap. And I know we've had some fun over the last couple of years on some of the trips out, in terms of little tests and things to make sure everybody knows which one's a blackcap and which ones are the others. So that's the blackcap. And as Simon quite rightly points out, these are 3 of the wonderful warblers that hopefully we're going to see over the next few weeks. As I mentioned, you know, we've got willow warbler and chiffchaff. There's outside chance of another Philoscopus warbler like the wood warbler turning up somewhere. But these scrub warblers or Sylvia warblers, besides the blackcap, as I say, a garden warbler, lesser whitethroat. So those are 3. And then, you know, we'll focus on some of the other ones, but later on, especially when we move towards the end of the session, when we're going to places where we might see sort of reed warblers and sedge warblers and some of the warbler species. Now just moving into the woodpeckers. We're going to look at great spotted woodpecker. Hopefully we've probably passed the peak of woodpecker activity now, but we should still get to hear great spotted and green woodpecker on our trips over the next couple of weeks or so. Very, I mean, we covered lesser spotted woodpecker on the first call a few weeks back, but it's very unlikely that we're going to see them or hear them in Bradman. But great spotted woodpecker can be seen in the garden, on your feeders, but obviously mostly a bird of the woodland. Can be found in quite a lot of woodland, not so much the coniferous woodland, as Simon referred to earlier. But a bird that, you know, again, you don't have to see it to know it's there. And one of the key things is to understand the difference between the various species when they're actually drumming, and using drumming as a display and attraction tool, rather than trying to make a hole in a tree. But we'll cover the call first. Quite specific. You can hear the cuckoo in the background. Let's hope we see a few of those. And then this is the drumming. This one sounds like it's drumming on an old dustbin lid rather than a tree. But you notice how it starts off strongly and fades away. And lasts for about sort of less than a second probably. And that's the greater spotted woodpecker. We'll have a look at the green woodpecker. We haven't got the drumming, I'm afraid, but obviously we're very familiar with the call. A much bigger bird than the great spotted woodpecker, unmistakable in flight and on a tree, and it's the only woodpecker species that you're likely to see on the ground in the UK, because they do love ants. So they'll stick ants on their plumage to clean up the plumage, but they also tend to gobble them up. I've had one in the garden over the course of the winter, and it has made the most enormous holes all the way across the lawn, which I'm having to fill in at the moment. It's just, and it's been digging down literally 3-4 inches below the surface of the soil, looking for larvae and ants and things. And it's the first time I've ever had one spend so much time and do so much digging in the garden. Quite incredible. But we should hear and see both of those species at the weekend, and hopefully we'll get to hear them both drum as well, and we can point out the differences in those calls. The wacky woodpeckers. Finally, finishing off with a couple of species. This has a tree creeper is another quite unobtrusive bird. Tends to like some of the smaller trees, silver birch, and also trees with lots of gnarling and crevices and nooks and crannies, because this is a bird that walks up a tree looking and investigating all the nooks and crannies in the bark, looking for insects and anything else that it can find to feed on, and can be quite difficult to see them. But then once you find them, you watch them, they'll climb up the tree, and then when they get to a certain point, you'll see them fly, and they'll fly down to the base of another tree. And this is the difference between the tree creeper and the next one we'll look at, which is the nuthatch. Tree creepers are always going up, except when they're flying down. And then they'll walk up, and then they'll fly down. They might go sort of round and round as well as they're walking up, but generally they're going up. And their call is quite a challenge for somebody of my age, but I managed to hear some the other day. I'm pleased to say I can still hear it. Susie will be able to hear them probably about 6 miles away with her hearing. But again, if you hear, it's one of those that, is it a goldcrest? Is it a tree creeper? Is it a long-tailed tit? And so on. And if you can't see it, it's probably going to be a tree creeper. But worth committing this one to memory. So one of the birds that you probably won't see very much of in a beechwood, because the beech trees have got such a smooth bark. And so this is the nuthatch, a bigger, stockier, it's quite a strong, stocky bird. This is the bird that goes up and down and along trees. So if you see one coming down a trunk, it's going to be a nuthatch, not a tree creeper. Obviously, the coloration is very different. That steely blue grey on the back, the big highwayman mask around the eye and the face, and then this lovely sort of buffy orange on the underparts. But yeah, a very stocky, short-tailed bird, and has quite a much stronger call as you'd expect from the tree creeper. And sometimes they you see they get a party of nuthatches together. They can get very excitable, and we had some in Bradnam on our last walk, and they were once we found them, they were getting quite excited. I think there were about 3 of them, and they were all calling at the same time in a very excitable way. A very nice bird. But Simon says there, what goes up doesn't always come down. So tree creepers always going up, except when they're in flight. Nuthatches, they can go any which way they like, because they can. Okay, I'll hand back to Simon to kick us off on this turning detective session.
Awesome.
Section,
And for those of you that, thanks, Dave. For those of you who are getting worried that we're taking up all of your evening, and these sessions are, we slightly lengthened them from last year because we felt that you getting you a bit more information, and we try and pack in as much, but we will absolutely finish by 7:30. So this last little bit really was just to touch upon what we were talking about at the beginning, which is a lot of these species will be specific to particular areas in the woodland, and also particular heights as well. So we heard, although we haven't really focused around sort of goldcrest, but goldcrests, coal tits, nuthatches, they all tend to be towards the tops of the trees. Very rarely will they come down lower, particularly for goldcrests and coal tits. Obviously, their main sort of habitat is the pine trees, and as you can see there's not much foliage low down. Where you see the blackcaps, the chiffchaffs, they tend to be about midway above the canopy. Willow warblers tend to be right at the top, and blackcaps can actually be quite low to the ground as well in that sort of scrubby area. So it's when you're walking around your surveys, just think about the types of wood that you're in. If you're in a purely deciduous woodland, you probably won't get goldcrest. You might, but you probably won't. You probably won't get coal tit, but you're in a much better location for potentially marsh tit and nuthatch and tree creeper, which you probably won't get in pine. So you can see there's a lot of probability about it. So if you're listening for something, or thinking, is it that? Is it? Actually think about where you are in the wood as well. Dave's still got control of the slide because we haven't swapped around. So if I can get Dave to go to the next slide there, please. The other thing to think about as well is, where are you in the country? So, you know, we did mention it's probably quite unlikely you're going to get lesser spotted woodpecker at Bradnam. But if one of your survey sites is, you know, into Oxfordshire, they've got a few more lesser spotted woodpeckers than we have. I had one on a survey site a couple of weeks ago. So again, it isn't to you know, if you're hearing something, you think, well, that sounds like a crested tit. Unless you're in the Highlands of Scotland, it's very unlikely that that's going to be the case. So again, when you're out in the woodlands, think about where you are. Think about the types of species, and realistically, on any survey, I mean, the survey I did this morning was incredible. It was one of the best surveys I've ever had. And even then, from a species perspective, I'm just having a look, other than sort of the more, I guess, farmlandy, woodlandy type birds, I only recorded perhaps 15 species. So again, we haven't got a huge window of species to work through. So again, just think about where you are in the country and where you are in that, or what wood you're in as well. And the last one, please, Dave.
Certainly.
Thank you. And when are you? So we are now coming towards the end of March. I had Field Fair, I had Red Wing today. There was little flocks of gulls flying over. But there was only chiff chaff. There was no blackcaps, there was no willow warblers. As we go through the season, you'll be getting different species turning up. Now, willow warblers will be turning up in the next week or so, but I typically don't record willow warblers in good numbers until the end of the month. Garden warblers, everyone sort of goes, oh, is it a garden warbler? Is it a garden warbler? I pretty much ignore most records of garden warbler until about the 20th or the 21st of April. So what we ask you to do as well is, as I say, you're unlikely to get willow warbler with Dave, but you're probably unlikely to get it with me. You might, but you'll probably get garden warbler with neither of us. However, when we go out in May, you're going to be dripping over garden warblers. You might get willow warbler, and you'll get loads of blackcaps because they'll all be in at that. So again, it's just thinking about when you are, where you are, and what height those woodland trees in. And what we're going to attempt to do, because Dave and I we do chat quite often, is obviously we're going to spend a fair bit of time at this Brandon Walk in the wooded area. We're going to spend a bit of time in the scrub as well, but we'll go over a lot more information that we've, in terms of locations and what you might be able to see in certain different woodlands. And I think, Dave, that's over to you for the last slide, really, the last bit of information. Oh yeah, sorry, questions, anyone? But if you want to shoot to the next one, Dave, just in expedience of time.
Yeah, so please make a note of the time for this Saturday, the 1st of April. It's going to be a 7 o'clock kickoff. It was down at 6 o'clock, but that would be too early. It'll still be pitch black. So it's 7 o'clock start. Same place as before. Park on the lay-by opposite the church, on the roadside by the cricket ground. And the Simon session on the 15th of April will go ahead at 6 o'clock as scheduled, because we will have the earlier mornings by then. So look forward to all those that are coming this Saturday. No pressure, but we've got to make sure we've got a good set of numbers, find some overwintering species that haven't left yet, which will have left by the time Simon does his trip. But no, we'll just get out, see what we can find. You never know, we might find a root here in the fields or another stone chat, and yellowhammers might be starting to sing, as well as all the species that we've covered this evening. So look forward to seeing you. Hopefully the weather will not be too wet, but do come prepared. Have a look at the weather forecast and make sure you've got some wet weather gear with you. The birds will be singing despite the weather. We'll see you then.
Thank you very, very much.
No problem at all. Good luck on Saturday.
And you, Simon.
Yeah, if anyone is defecting from Dave because they can't make Saturday and do want to come on the 15th, just please let Dave and Nick know. You've all got my number from the Tracking the Impact one anyway. As I say, the reason we spread them around so far was that we know people are have a bit of difficulty. The bad news is, or no, is it the good news, Dave? I don't know actually. Is I'm not going to be here for the next webinar because it's my 50th birthday celebration. So I think Dave is leading the charge on his own on that one, and then I'm taking over and I'm doing the one in May, I believe. And while you're off on your holidays.
Yeah, I think that's the plan.
Yeah, if I've got that the wrong way around, but I'm pretty sure you're doing April and I'm doing May. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think so. I think you can't remember when your birthday is, Simon.
I'm hoping so. Thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you at one of the sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Brilliant. Again.
See you later.
Bye.
Cheers then. Bye-bye.
Bye. Look on Saturday, Dave.
And you.
See you soon.
Could be.
Bye-bye.
I think it's going to be a little bit damp, but we'll see what happens. We should be okay. But then
I'm sure you'll get something.
The birds will be there. So, all right. Take care. See you soon.
See you soon, mate. Bye-bye.
Cheers then. Bye-bye.